In today's world, despite having access to a wider freedom of speech that we ever had access to in history, or most of it, many people still refrain from taking a strong stance in face-to-face conversations and confronting their opinions simply because they are too scared of being shut down easily if they were to finally speak out. And in this video, we will see why you don't need to be right over somebody else in most cases. You simply need to question them in a way that unveils their own logical fallacies to take the lead of any conversation more smoothly.
I believe in objective morality. I'll make ought claims based on an unchanging standard, but you're a moral relativist. You can't be like, you can't do that. It's relative. It's totally relative.
Mean?
So is one set of morals of more value than another set of morals?
I think there are moral facts, if that's what you're asking me.
No, that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you if one set of moral particulars has more value than another set of moral particulars.
I'm not sure how to answer.
Well, I would just need to know if... So, okay, for instance, we have one society over here that murders women and a society over here that does not murder women. Okay? Can you point to something objective that makes the society murdering women? There's some like moral claim that you can make which is objective for why that's wrong.
Well, I mean, murder by definition is wrong.
No. Why would it's the unjustified?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Unjustified doesn't mean immoral.
So we are going to use the magical linguistics model to see and break down what is happening during this debate. And as a reminder, you have the whole book talking about this model and how it works down below in the description. Now, this debate at this moment was referring to slavery and the position of women in history. And the first claim made by Andrew Wilson here is that because you are a moral relativist, your standards for what is right or wrong and how can you judge that is flawed anyway. She's not quite sure of what he means, therefore she's asking for clarification, the best thing to do in those cases, and he's elaborating on the moral standpoint being used during this conversation, going into the alternative map, what do you consider to be moral and right and just versus what do I consider being moral and just and what should be done, and he's using the topic of murder as an example, explaining that if her moral standards are only subjective because she does not believe in God like he does, and whatever she believes, it is subjective anyway, then how could she say that anything, including murder, can be wrong by itself for the whole population if anything she is judging is only subjective anyway? To which she is trying to reframe that, no, murder by itself, the actual intention of murdering anyone is wrong by itself. It is wrong for everyone, in any time, and in any sort of way, it is wrong. But the problem, and that leads us right back into the effectiveness of listening more carefully to your interlocutor, because he knows from her standpoint that she is not an essentialist from a philosophical view, therefore, coming into her worldview, it is supposed to be unjustified murder. For any contextualist, it is more the unjustified murder that is wrong and not the whole concept of murder by itself. So it is in this model called an alternative view you point out to another detail of the actual claim being made. And he's concluding this one claim with, because something is unjustified does not always mean it is immoral. Therefore, that standpoint does not fit quite well in her worldview at this point so far. And this concluding statement here comes back to the first claim he made, that being a moral relativist does not position her, in his opinion, as being any potential source of knowledge for what is right or wrong in society.
Well, it means wrong. If it's not just, then it's unjust, which would be wrong.
Okay. We'll rephrase that. They set the conditionals for something you would consider to be murder and say it isn't. It's the justified killing of this group of people here. You consider it murder. What makes their moral facts wrong?
I mean, obviously it would depend on reason and context.
So you can, with reason and context, determine which moral facts are correct?
I think you can have certain observations when it comes to the outcomes. I mean, that would be consequentialism. I think there can be more moral facts in terms of there are things that are always wrong regardless of context.
Like?
Like rape.
Why would that always be wrong?
Well, rape would always be wrong.
Grape. We'll say grape.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, that was right.
Yeah.
Rape would always be wrong because it would, because of the harm that it causes.
Yeah. Why is harm wrong?
Because harm is, I mean, again, I would say harm by definition is wrong. Because it is an undesirable outcome within our subjective experience.
Okay, so are all undesirable outcomes immoral?
No.
Okay, well then, then you just contradicted your position.
Sure.
Right here, he's offering a new hypothetical to test the logic that she's operating from to see if that fits in every context, explaining that if one group of people is being murdered but they say they don't commit any murder, how do you know that their moral facts are wrong, and how do you evaluate that? She says, trying to come back to some nuance in the conversation with the alternative views, it would depend upon reason and context, and I'm sure she could elaborate on that. However, being the debater that he is, he's not going to let her expand on what she means. He's going to go for the complete belief structure right away to see if he can attack that immediately, asking, so you can, with reason and context, determine which moral facts are correct. So that is the resulting outcome as a result of your first claim. I am attaching to a consequence to see if your whole belief again stands and if that fits your entire worldview, and in the end if your worldview, yes or no, is logical. She says that regardless of context, some things are wrong anyway, which comes back to the moral perspective, and that is the main thing he's trying to attack in most debates on those topics, because he knows that if you don't have religion or anything to back it up, it is always more difficult to defend morality without appealing to only your own subjective standards. As a consequence, there he's asking for clarification. Some things are wrong regardless of context, such as specifically, and she says grape, to not use the actual word, obviously, grape, to which he asked, why is grape wrong? By your standards again, we can find many reasons for why it is wrong, but what is your version of why it is wrong specifically? She says because of the harm it causes, so now we have the complete belief structure, and due to that questioning, we get much deeper into the values and judgments and standpoints of the person we are interacting with, and as you have seen here, that is by getting way deeper into the questioning process that you can eventually get someone stuck on their logic instead of trying to attack them way too early in the conversation. Let them elaborate, let them speak, and that is where you can see the people who actually know what they're talking about and the people who just try to be yelling louder than you, but who in the end don't really know what they're talking about. So when asking why is harm wrong, and he basically knows he's going to get her stuck here anyway, she says specifically the actual definition in her mind, because it is an undesirable outcome in our subjective experience. But this time closing the whole loop now that he has fished, he has elaborated on all the smaller details she could eventually appeal to defend her logic. Now he goes for the final and a claim, asking, do you think as a consequence, as a resulting outcome of what you just said, do you think that anything that is an undesirable outcome, including things much less harmful than grape, do you think all of those are immoral by themselves? And the answer is obviously no. At least she has the good faith of acknowledging and admitting that she might have been wrong on this specific fact at least. That is a good point, I think. So he says that indeed in that specific context you have contradicted your whole position. But you see, the whole point is not to attack somebody too early, it is to let them elaborate on all the details and facts they might use to justify their logic, and keep asking for the definitions they use to explain what is right or wrong from their judgment.
You just said women would have more identity. Because
identity in terms of if you're going to be dependent on a husband, then your labor is predetermined for you. Your identity in terms of being a wife and mother is predetermined for you.
Yeah, but the beneficiaries of that is that your accruement of debt is also non-existent, and so you can never be a slave to capitalism.
It's not really non-existent because your husband has it as well. So I mean, there is still capitalistic threats.
You were not ever responsible for your husband's debt.
But you still suffer the outcomes if it doesn't work out, right?
Yeah, but you suffer the outcomes of that now under
right,
capitalism.
but you would have more control and autonomy, right?
You don't
know,
seem
it's
to
either
have.
like you're
I
the
don't
captain
see
of
how
your own
women
sinking ship, or you're just kind of a passenger on the Titanic.
Like you use these words, these kind of buzzwords, right? You say they have more autonomy. Mm-hmm. How do women have more autonomy?
Self-determination through choice.
What choices? Which ones?
Essentially how they want to experience their life. Do they want to get married? Do they want to have children?
They had the option to do that before. They didn't have to get married. Most of the time, women who didn't get married stayed at home with their parents. By the way, right now, most women who don't get married, they often stay at home with their parents. Not a lot has changed in that department.
I mean,
and in this last clip, I just wanted to point out one technique he just used here that I think is interesting to catch people's attention more easily during a debate, because when she said you would have more control and autonomy as a woman, they are slightly talking past each other at this point, and he says you are using all these buzzwords, like women would have more autonomy being one of those buzzwords. But the point here is that he has been using that technique many times of whenever somebody is getting a bit more agitated or starts not letting him speak as much as it was the case so far, he is basically labeling what they say or what they do under another terminology. Here, buzzwords, which is nothing very abstract, people can't understand easily, but just introducing a new label to describe what the person just said or did is helping at least to cause a pattern interrupt and catch their attention, because it might be slightly confusing at the moment you say it. And at least they just want usually to understand exactly what do you mean by that. So during that small window of time where their mind becomes more open, you can use better elaborations if they haven't been letting you speak so far. And obviously the art of the pattern interrupt, of using specifics, moral values, consequence patterns and all sorts of reframing are all contained and detailed in the book Magical Linguistics, available down below on the first link. You can check that out if you are interested. And in the meantime, thanks a lot for watching. I will see you soon on the next video.